Now to a scam that's been doing the rounds for years, but I'm afraid has recently started to spike once again, and it is still as nasty and devious as ever.
It's known as courier fraud, so called because it usually ends up with someone claiming to be a courier, turning up on your doorstep to, quotes, look after your cash. And it's as cruel as it is frightening.
But as we're about to find out, the tide just might be turning, thanks to a combination of people getting wise to the criminals' tactics and the police delivering justice.
Doreen Higgins from Brentford in West London is no fan of her landline phone.
The only calls you get on the landline are nuisance calls. I don't get any calls from my friends and family that use the mobile, but I've got it as a backup in case my mobile packs up any time.
So, in April 2025, when her landline did ring, she was caught a little on the hop, especially when she discovered who was calling.
I picked up and he said, "I'm Constable Ryan from Victoria Station." He said my name and address, and he said, "I've got your niece here in custody."
It sounds worrying, but 90-year-old Doreen remained calm.
I've only got one niece in this country, and I knew it wasn't her because she's 62, and no way would she be in any trouble with the police.
Doreen explained as much to Constable Ryan, who countered that the woman in custody might be lying about being her niece.
He said she had multiple credit cards, and one of them is in your name. I was shocked. I was worried because I thought they could take the money from the bank.
Constable Ryan went on to read out a list of cloned cards the woman had in her possession.
He said, "If I name them, tell me which ones you've got." So he named them, and when they got to the HSBC card, I said, "Yes, that's mine."
The police officer provided his badge number and gave Doreen a crime number, then asked her to hang up the phone and call back on a new number.
He said, "Well, now," he said, "I want you to put the phone down and then redial this number 191 and verify my credentials."
Doreen did as instructed, but the call wouldn't connect. And before she had time to decide what to do next, the landline rang again. The caller convinced Doreen they were aware she'd been trying to call and went on to check the crime reference number and Constable Ryan's badge details.
He said, "Now we know that that's correct." He said, "I want you to log on to your account and tell me how much money is in that account." So I said, "Why do you need to know that?" Oh, he said, "Because it's for insurance. If you need to make a claim, we need to know how much money is in the bank." I said, "Well, that sounds very suspicious." I then realised it was a scam.
She was right. Doreen now needed to get off the phone as soon as possible.
I said, "I've got to go out now. I've got a dental appointment at 12 o'clock. And I put the phone down. I said I had a dental appointment just to get rid of them.
But after hanging up, Doreen sprang into action.
I was very shaken at the time, but realised I had to ring the police and do something about it.
First, by trying to identify the caller.
I dialed 1471 on the phone, which usually tells you the number, but it came up as withheld.
Then she called her bank to cancel her cards before calling the police, who promised to send an officer to visit. But when Doreen's made-up dental appointment was due to finish, the scammers were back on the phone. Doreen, however, stood firm.
They rang every 10 minutes for the first hour. In all, they called me 10 times. But at 3:30, they gave up. They realised that they weren't going to get anywhere.
Soon after, 2 police officers knocked on the door, and once she'd checked their ID to ensure they were genuine, Doreen let them in.
I was pleased to see the police when they arrived, and they said that it's a criminal offence to impersonate a police officer, and they would look into it. It was reassuring to hear from the police that it was a scam.
Doreen had had a near miss. Had she not cottoned on to the caller's tactics, she could have been conned out of thousands of pounds in what's known as courier fraud. It's a crime that's been doing the rounds for years, but police forces across the country have warned of a recent surge in incidents. Joining me in HQ from one such force is Detective Superintendent Paul Spate, who heads up the Serious and Organised Crime Investigation Team at Merseyside Police.
Thank you so much for coming in, Paul. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about what is courier fraud?
So courier fraud typically will occur when a fraudster contacts a victim purporting to be either from the bank, from a fraud team within the bank, or a police officer saying they're investigating fraudulent activity on their account. They will then ask them to send their banking cards and personal identification numbers to a courier who they will send round to the address to collect. Once the fraudster has got physical hold of the card and the PIN number, it makes it much easier for them to go and make purchases.
So from what you've seen of Doreen's case, does this look like it was leading towards courier fraud then?
Most definitely. Doreen did the right thing in putting the receiver down. What would have happened then had she stayed on the call if the fraudster believed that Doreen had bought into it? They would have then asked her to present her cards to a courier who they would send round to the address. Now, that would either be a courier or a person impersonating a police officer. They would then take the cards to a local shopping centre or bank and then look to spend money on it whilst keeping Doreen on the call so that she could authorise those transactions if the bank does become suspicious.
In 2025, the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau said £21 million was lost to courier fraud in the previous financial year, with victims losing on average £12,000 each. But police forces around the country are fighting back. In May 2025, an investigation involving Paul's team saw the conviction of one courier fraudster, Gavin Butters, for his role in a £50,000 scam that involved duping pensioners into thinking they were part of a police fraud investigation themselves.
So once a fraudster had contacted the victim and convinced them that this was a fraud investigation that they needed to take an active part in, and on some occasions the fraudster actually cautioned the victim and threatened them with arrest if they didn't comply, which again added some sort of scare tactics to what they were doing. So Gavin Butters' role was to attend at the address, either purporting to be a courier or on one occasion purported to be a police officer. He then collected the cards as instructed by the fraudster on the phone, and then he would go and then use those cards to make purchases elsewhere whilst the fraudster kept the victim on the telephone.
And he's been convicted, hasn't he? But how did that come to pass? How did you get enough evidence?
So once that offence had been reported to us, we reached out to our UK-wide network of police forces, and we quickly realised that we were dealing with a linked series of offences, all relating to courier fraud. So worked closely with officers from Lancashire, Cheshire, Derbyshire and as far afield as Thames Valley to collate that evidence, build that evidential picture against Butters. We worked really closely with colleagues in West Yorkshire who assisted us greatly in identifying his location and arrested him and then bringing him back to Merseyside for questioning.
In May 2025, Butters was sentenced to 33 months in prison for his involvement in offences across 8 different areas of the UK.
So let's just talk about what people can do if they think they are being targeted by this kind of scam. What do you want people to have in their minds at home?
It's very unusual for a bank or the police to contact and then start talking to you about an ongoing investigation. If they then start moving into, we need access to your bank account, we need to have access to your bank card for fingerprints, then that's a clear red flag that this is actually a scam. And my advice to people would be to do what Doreen did and put the phone down.
Yeah.
And using the 101 system.
That's for the police,
yeah. For the police and also to the bank so that they have a record that you know, there may be some unusual activity on the account which they can step in and prevent. At whatever stage you think you've been scammed, even if you were alive to it within the first 5 minutes, please let us know so we can track and trace these offences.
So that's when you realise at an early stage. You might realise when you perhaps handed over more details. What do you do then?
So if you suspect that somebody is actually en route to your address to collect your banking cards, then please contact 999 because that's a live crime. That's happening now, and we need to get officers to you as soon as possible to try and prevent that crime from taking place and protect you from further harm.
Detective Superintendent Paul Spate, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.